Are you ready to learn how to do subject to lease options, creative financing deals in wholesaling real estate? That is right. Guys, what is up? My name is Zach Ginn, and in today's video, I'm going to show you how you can turn your dead leads in wholesaling into huge real estate deals. And so really what we're talking about today is what we call creative financing. Now, most wholesalers, I get it. I was like okay, creative financing. Now I'm going to skip out of this video. I don't want to listen. Guys, I'm not a wholesaler. I don't want to deal with creative finance. I'm not that type of guy. Guys, I want you to understand that when your wholesaling path keeps going, you will eventually have leads that are creative financing deals, but unfortunately, you just can't wholesale them, right? They're unmotivated. They're quote unquote dead leads. And unfortunately, there's just no money to be made on that in wholesaling. But if you can just ask like 2 or 3 very weird specific questions, you can turn that into a $5,000, $10,000, even $15,000 wholesaling deal. And so that is the point today. This is going to be a dummy's guide to creative financing, a dummy's guide to subject tos, lease options, seller financing, wraps, all that fun stuff for wholesalers. Okay. So this isn't like, I'm going to show you how to get in creative financing from a real estate investing perspective. Now, like the big perspective today is for wholesalers. And if you just want to learn what creative financing is, this is going to be a good video for it. You are going to run into a cash buyer that's going to talk about it. You're going to have your networking. It's just best to understand it, and you can turn it into wholesaling deals, especially in the market we're coming in right now. I can tell you, I've converted so many wholesaling deals into a lease option deal. And let me just tell you straight up why you want to learn this, okay? Number one, this is super important. We had a wholesaling deal a couple years ago that was just a stupid, dead deal, okay? Stupid, dead deal. Turn that into a lease option that is going to make $55,000, right? And it's pretty amazing. And so this is why in wholesaling real estate, we are going to be talking about this, all right? This is why I have the iPad out. We're going to get visual, all right? We're going to get very visual in everybody. And we're just going to learn creative financing, not only for wholesaling real estate, but for just creative financing in general. I feel like so many wholesalers, they hear the term and they just kind of ignore it. I think it's best just to spend some time to just really look into it and exactly how it works and how we can make money off of it. And I think it's overall going to make everybody a better real estate investor and wholesaler. And heck, if you're doing well, this is going to be a great strategy just for rental properties, right? So I'm excited, guys. I know a lot of wholesalers are going to get a lot of value from this. This is going to be probably, I'm just thinking about it, roughly a 10, and let's call it introductory webinar. So let's call it a $4,000 creative finance course today I'm going to give to you. Okay, this is a subject to course. This is a creative finance course, and that's what we're going to break down. So we are going to share creative financing. And as somebody who admits he's a big dummy, all right, that it's hard for me to grasp some concepts. Creative finance took me a lot longer than I understood. Because I'm a visual learner, everyone talked about it by just saying it. And so what I want to do is just get behind on here and talk about it. And guys, I want to give everybody a big disclaimer. This is from my perspective. There are legal perspectives and legal differences and everything like that. We do have lawyers handle pretty much 99% of the creative finance deals we do. And you'll have lawyers at title companies and everywhere else. That's going to help assist you with it. Whatever I do, make sure you seek legal advice for anything you do, including tying your shoes. Seek a lawyer. That's what my lawyer says to say, and I agree with him. And so if I said something wrong, my lawyers will correct me, and your lawyer should correct you too. So that being said, we're ready to go. I had to give a lot of disclaimers today for this, so who knows. But let's break it down. Let's get into it, and let's share creative financing for real estate wholesaling and real estate investing in general. So we got the nice iPad out. We're ready to go, and let's talk about this. So creative financing, in my opinion, really comes down to 3 or 4 main strategies, and 3 to 4 strategies I think you guys should understand the terms of. So let's break down what the terms are just to get an honest grasp of it and why it makes money and how you can do it, right? There's no, oh, you have to join my course or you have to buy this to learn what the scripts are, what to say. I'm just going to share what they are today. So let's break this down and let's get into it. So there's honestly 3 terms I want to talk about today, and we'll keep it simple. Number 1 is what they call, the most popular one is called subject to. Now, there's a lot of ways to say it. Someone says, oh, it's a sub 2, right? Guys, I don't play that game. I don't like the acronyms on it, like sub 2, like with the 2, like I don't get it, right? They're all marketing points. I'm going to tell you what the honest truth is. Let's talk in real legal terms. Okay, let's cut the sub 2 off. Let's X that out. Okay, we're talking about taking over a mortgage subject to. Let's not get crazy with the terms. Let's just call it subject to, okay? Subject to is what it is, all right? And so that's the that's the first one. And that's where a lot of wholesalers get their $5,000, $10,000 time and fees doing that. Number 2 is something that they call lease options. And I actually love lease options. Some people don't like lease options because, you can't make money forever on it, but they're really good $45,000, $50,000 deals, and you can really run them up. And the honest truth is, I would say most wholesaling leads are going to be lease options. Most wholesaling leads will be in this lease option category. So I think for most wholesalers, this is going to be a really valuable piece for you. And then number 3, basically what they call seller finance. All right, seller finance is number 3, and that's probably going to be number 3, number 2, and the number 1 option for most wholesalers. That's what it's going to be. I don't really believe most wholesalers are going to be using any other terms yet. I think there are some other ones to do it, but between you and me, I truthfully believe that this is really what you got to deal with, okay? And so these are going to be the 3 terms. And now we got to talk about why do I want to deal with these terms? Why is this important? So let's kind of get into it, and let's kind of share exactly why you want to deal with these, what they are, and how they actually make money for us in wholesaling real estate, right? So let's talk about wholesaling real estate in general, okay, right? So wholesaling is a pretty simple process. It's a 1, 2, 3 punch, okay? Number 1 is marketing, right? Number 2, so this is just wholesaling real estate, right? Number 1, we do marketing. And then number 2 is going to just basically be acquisitions, where we just basically close the deal. We lock up the contract, right? So we'll lock up contract. Number marketing is going to be able to just find a seller. That's pretty much what it is. And then 3 is just dispo, which is basically cash buyers. This is just going to be sell contract for money. My handwriting's terrible, but deal with it, right? Oh, I think I'm in the way here. That's what these 3 are, okay? You find the seller, you lock up the contract, you sell the contract. Now, I know it's more advanced than that. I get it, but we're talking basics here, okay? That's pretty much what wholesaling is. I like it because it's boom, boom, boom. Pretty simple. Guys, that's why I love wholesaling. It's super simple. Anyone can deal with it. Easy, right? It's very, very, very simple, okay? I just believe so many wholesalers go out here and they make it all complicated. And guys, this is what wholesaling is. If you want to make it more complicated than you want, do it. But honestly, this is what it is, and that is how you do it. So this is wholesaling real estate in a nutshell. So how is this different than doing a creative financing deal? So I'll show you, right? So for a wholesaling real estate deal, there has to be about 2 criteria, really. I want to say 3 criteria, okay? What's the criteria for wholesaling real estate? Number 1, the person has to be the owner, okay? The owner has to want to sell. Actually, heck, let's change this to need to sell, okay? They need to sell, all right? They are the legitimate owners of the property. Hey, you are the actual owner. You're not scamming me. This is legit, right? They are the owner, and they basically, they has to need to sell. All right, whatever. That's I know the language is terrible, but whatever. All right. Number 2, there has to be this funky thing called equity. Okay? There has to be equity in the house. And let me go on a quick equity tangent. But equity is basically, it's a really simple equation, and this is Zach's super stupid simple elementary school math, but it is the value minus basically the debt on the property, the mortgage, okay? That is what it is. So if you agree to buy it for $100,000 and there is a $25,000 left on the loan on the property, That means at closing, seller would get $75,000, right? Pretty simple. And then on a deal for wholesaling, let's say we sell to a cash buyer for 120K, right? Which basically means that 100K, 75K goes to the seller, right? That equals up. 25K goes to the bank. And then 20K goes to me. I'm a happy guy, $20,000. Boom, right? That is what equity is. Now, in wholesaling real estate, you have to have some equity in the deal. For example, if the person here, which I know most wholesalers in this market have never experienced something going down, but this is something that possibly can happen in the future, where maybe they took a loan out and they owe $90,000. And you might say to yourself, oh, that's not bad. That's $10,000, right? That's $10,000. But let's say it's actually worth 100 on the market. So if a seller like this did that, remember, if he sold it or she for 100K on market, where would be the costs, right? First of all, they're going to have to pay 6% to a realtor, and let's roughly do 2% for closing. Now, it's very, very conservative, okay? I would probably say it's a little more, but honestly, it's all up to you which one you want to do. That's going to be 6K off the bat. It's going to be another $2,000. And then on top of that, maybe, just maybe, it doesn't negotiate perfectly. It has to sell for $8,000, right? And that will give them about $2,000 in equity if they're lucky. Now, here's the main issue. What if real estate values go down 10%? And let's call it five. Let's make it very easy. Let's just say real estate goes down 6%. All right. So what's 0.94 of 100? That'll make it 94,000. So let's say now real estate goes down. The whole market goes down 6%. I think most people have seen that roughly for bigger markets. Let's do Austin, Texas, for example, right? That means value. Now this deal is now the property is worth 94,000. Uh-oh. Now if I sell it on the market, it's going to change a little, right? But like things aren't looking too hot for us, right? Because if I have to pay, now it's usually 12% for closing, but I'm being very conservative here, just making easy numbers. So that's 94,000. So let's get rid of this. And guys, if you are not following on anything I'm saying, I'm going to check the comments. Please let me know. I'd love to explain this, but I'm going very slow, very, very slow on purpose. So let's say they have about, let's do 5,700 for a realtor. And let's do a 2% closing at 94,000. These are very rough numbers, but let's do 1,900, right? Let's do 1,900 plus 5,700. That is about minus $77,600 just to close it. Now you minus that off. Here's the issue. But let's add this extra thing on here, okay? We're gonna minus out that $90,000 mortgage. That has to be loaned to the bank. Now if I add that in, things aren't looking too good here because you had 90K on that. That means you are in a negative balance minus 94, right? So that is $97,000 going to be owed. You add that selling price on there, you are going to be in negative equity position of $3,600, which means to sell this deal on the market, you're going to have to pay $3,600 out of your own pocket. You're going to have to pay to sell the property. And a lot of these deals that they pay value, like high price for, and then goes down 6% and they got that big loan, it's screwed, right? You might say, oh, Zach, most people, they do a 25%. No. FHA is 3.5, right? They're 3.5. There's conventional loans at 3%. That's rough, right? And so these are really rough numbers. And if it's 94K is the value, most cash buyers are going to want 80 to 70% of that. So most cash buyers are going to offer me, right? So if let's do 80%, just be nice. Most cash buyers are going to say, I need to buy this thing for 75K. They owe 90, right? So I'm just kind of doing the numbers here. It's like, uh-oh, right? This is where things get interesting, okay? I hate to go on a tangent here, but if a cash buyer's at 75K and they owe 90K, this is equal to a dead deal. I can't make money off this, right? There's nothing I can do. So, okay, I lock it up for, let's say I lock it up for 70. You sure the seller is going to be okay with a 20K loss? No, of course they're not. So that's a dead deal for most wholesalers, right? And so that's what equity is. Equity needs to be, the value has to be above the debt. And when real estate goes up, usually that's not a problem. But there's a lot of places right now where that's not the case, right? And so when the real estate market goes up, a lot of these deals are out here, right? So for wholesaling to happen, there has to be some equity in the home. And then really number 3, this is very, very simple. Like it's not really complicated, but you need to have 2 contracts, right? You have the purchase and sale, which is basically me agreeing to buy the house. And then you need the assignment of contract, basically saying me selling it for a certain price. That's pretty much all the criteria you need for anyone in wholesaling to get a deal, right? You have to have the 2 contracts signed. Someone has to have equity in the house, and they're the actual owner and they want to sell. That's pretty simple. If we have a probate, things get a little complicated, but that's really it. Now, let's talk about my rules for the creative financing, and then we'll get into what it is, okay? Let's talk about a subject to, and my creative finance people are going to tear me up for this, for simplifying this in a way that it's probably not the best to simplify it, but honestly, it helps me grasp the concept. So that's why I'm talking about it. Number 1, for a subject to, this is an absolute rule, but this is what I love. It has to have low to no equity. I like it because it rhymes. All right. No to low equity, which means there might be a couple. I would say at least 8% or less equity. That's what I like. Some people like 7, some people like 15. 8's going to be rough. So I think 15 is probably going to be the best for your marketing on it if you're going to market for it. But I would say roughly 8 or less. Okay. That's what I've seen. Low to no equity, subject to. Number 2, pretty simple, but the seller needs to sell, right? And why is this a point? The person, maybe they have a job in Nebraska. They have to deal with a sick aunt or uncle, and they have to go halfway across the country, and they got to do all this crazy stuff. And they're like, I have to move, right? Like I have to, and like, what are you going to do, right? They have to sell, but they have negative equity. What they do. And then number 3, this is going to be the truth. This is going to be something that's not talked about too much, but all options don't work. What do I mean by that? Let's elaborate on what all options don't work means. So we have a book here, and I do want to explain everybody on this book. So if you ever want to buy this book and try to prove me wrong, this is How Real Estate Fortunes Are Made by George Bockel. I bring this book up to flex on every single real estate creative finance guru and wholesaling guru on the world. This is a book from, let's get the page number on here. This is a book from 1972. All right, I don't know if you guys can see it from here. This is a book from 1972. You see that pages are yellow. All right, here's my boy George. All right, he was not a young man when he wrote this book. Okay, since the 40s, he's been doing this. He talks about how to use leverage for sales in real estate wholesaling. He talks about how to do creative financing deals. He talks about how to take over mortgages subject to. He talks about, this guy was he was like the 50th guy to make a book like this, but this was one of the true OGs of real estate. Okay. Wholesaling, creative finance, he did it all. All right. He just didn't do one thing. So shout out to George Bockel here. This is a real book. We actually, on a flip, this book was actually in a probate deal we had. So that's how I knew it was actually happened. Okay. Now, he's an icon. He's talked about these strategies. So before any of you broke real estate gurus say, Zach just said something that's patented for my course. No. George Bockel right here talked about this in the 70s, how all other options don't work. Okay. And so these gurus, they think they've owned the world. Okay. When I talk about how to, sales, I use old Zig Ziglar, but like these are books you probably haven't heard of, but they get deals, and this is stuff I teach you. So I want to explain it because in about 4 creative finance courses where people have gotten very upset over me for teaching stuff like this because it was in their course and they're the ones who invented it, when I've been reading George Bockel books for years now. Okay. And so I just wanted to get on a little tangent there to let you know that like, this is stuff people claim that they own, but they don't. All right. So all options. Oh, what is this? Get out of here. All right. All options don't work. What does that mean? So I hate to say this. Nobody wants to do a creative financing deal. That's a very controversial statement, but it's something that they need to do, right? And so let's talk about the options. So if you talk to a seller with low to no equity, okay, so when we're dealing with a seller who has a situation where they have low to no equity. Now, this is different from when in wholesaling, you deal with people with a lot of equity, so you don't really deal with these type of sellers. There are a decent amount out there. And so all options don't work, all right? What does this mean? All right, now there's a lot of ways to do it, but like number one, okay, you have low equity. Why don't you sell with a realtor? Now I'll put the restricted trademark for my realtors out there so they feel good about themselves. Sell with a realtor. They're like, no, Zach, that doesn't work. I have to pay all these commissions and I'm going to owe money. I can't do that, right? Okay, fine. Number two, why don't you just sell it to one of those we buy ugly houses guys, right? Why don't you sell it to a wholesaler, right? Like me. No, right? They offer me $75,000. I owe $90,000. Dang it. Okay. Well, why don't you just rent it out and just wait for the real estate market to go up? You know, I thought about that, but number one, I'm not a landlord. I'm not good at that. And number two is I can't afford 2 mortgage payments. Oh, you can't? Dang it. Okay. How about number 4? This is a good one. Why don't you do a short sale? Oh, what's a short sale? A short sale is basically when, there's a lot of ways to say it, but that's basically when you go to the bank and you basically admit that you're underwater and you just kind of sell it and you kind of get out of it. But the problem is sometimes you have to go under bankruptcy. There's a lot of short sales are so different in every place, in every bank. And there are different definitions for it, but basically it's the process when you're underwater and you go to the bank and you kind of just wipe it clean, right? Really, the bank agrees to the lender that it's like, okay, you can get out of it, right? We'll take the loss. I don't want to call it loan forgiveness, but the problem with the short sale is, number one, it is a possibility, but first of all, it's a long process and you're just going to be losing money doing it. It's really bad for your credit. Some people say, no, it's not. And it's honestly like, it's very embarrassing for a lot of people, right? It's very embarrassing. They have to go through this, right? Same thing. I might spell words wrong. Who cares? What about BK or what they call bankruptcy? Why don't I declare bankruptcy like Michael Scott? I declare bankruptcy. As a guy that loves real estate, that was probably one of the funniest things I've ever seen in my entire life. I can't even admit it, but it was so funny. Bankruptcy's kind of long. It makes you look bad. It's embarrassing. Nobody wants a bankruptcy on their record, right? Like it looks very bad. And so it might stop your prospects from getting another home. So it's possible, but for most people, they don't want to deal with that, right? Like they don't want to deal with that long stress and dealing with something like that. So they're like, I'm out of options, right? And and then maybe on a bankruptcy or a short sale, right? Maybe they have assets. Like maybe they have a $300K 401k that they don't want to lose, right? Maybe that's going to be a little out there, right? Like maybe they're going to lose that, right? Maybe they have grandma's money or they have something, right? They don't want to do that, right? And so it's like, ooh, what are we going to do? And so really, this is what we're going to do, right? And let's say, for example, this is like let's say a divorce situation, or this is a probate, where if they sell it, they have to deal with taxes and all this stuff. They don't want to deal with it, right? All the options are exhausted, right? And there's like 5, 10 more, but like, let's just talk about the big ones, right? How do I deal with this, right? And so basically how I deal with this is you just offer just to take over the loan and then just basically give like $5K up front. I pay the loan. I take the loan over. I take the mortgage over subject to. So I take it over subject to. That is it. That's what I'm doing. I'm taking it over subject to. So which basically means, and let's try to explain this. Make sure you all screenshot this if you want. But basically what that means, let's just go erase all this junk. Basically we take it over subject to, which in really simple terms, I'm trying to make this as easy as possible without going crazy, but all right. Basically what that entails is, let's say the mortgage is, I'm using just random numbers just to make it seem easy for anyone starting out. Let's say the mortgage is $1,000 a month. All right, like that's pretty simple, right? They owe 90, and the value of the piece of real estate right now is like 95K, which means obviously if they sold it, they'd be negative equity, right? That's not good. $1,000 a month. That includes principal and interest, right? Taxes, let's say for a property like that, let's call it $1,400 a year, which I know is low, but I'm just making this easy and simple for most people. And then let's say insurance is going to be roughly $100 a month, so $1,200. All right. Roughly that means it's going to be, what is that going to be? $2,600 plus 12. So $14,600 a year is what it costs basically to have the house. So that is what we're going to call principal plus interest plus taxes plus insurance is going to be what they call PITI. PITI. 14 grand a year. You can divide that by 12. So what's the PITI, right? Like, so PITI would be, let's divide this by 12. It's going to be about $1,217 a month. That is what it costs basically to run it, right? That's pretty much it, right? Now we can go, oh, what if we could depreciate the property? What if I actually go out here and gain equity? Do I add that into the value? No. All right, like just what the cost is, okay? That being said, if I know roughly the PITA is 1217, this is what I look. So how do I tell if this is a good subject to deal or not, right? Basically what we're doing, and I'm going to just get all that tangent real quick, but let's say someone has their mortgage, right? And so they have the mortgage and they have negative equity, all right? So this is going to be the mortgage, and there's something called the deed, all right? Pretty simple. But how it is, it's kind of a layer, right? So deed shows who is the owner of the property, and the mortgage shows that owner owes bank, and that's an amount, right? And so basically, they are the owner of the property. They control the asset, the house, right? And there's a mortgage basically underneath it. That's pretty much it, right? So in subject 2, basically what we do is you got me. What am I going to do here? I'm going to take over the deed. So now I am owner, okay? And then the mortgage stays into their name, all right? And so I get the deed, and the mortgage stays in old owners. Now there's land trusts, there's other things around that. I don't want to complicate it right now, but there are ways around this. But this is basically what it is. You pay the mortgage. And so what happens if, they say that's it. So I'm the owner now, and I just pay off the mortgage, and what most people do is they put a renter in there and then make money off of it. But the question is, this is acquisitions, and this is probably the first thought you're going to have is like, the seller's going to be like, what if you don't pay? Oh my gosh, what do you do if you don't pay? Pretty simple, right? Like, you can explain it a bunch of ways, but if I don't pay, basically you can have basically a clause on your subject 2 where if I don't pay, you get back the deed, right? You can write it into a contract where the deed actually goes back to the person if I don't pay like one payment. Number 2, I'm going to renovate the house, which basically means you get the value add on the renovation plus the equity I paid in with the mortgage. So you'll be making a ton of money. You probably want me to not to pay you because you'll automatically get that property over, right? And I'm screwed. So if I don't pay, I'm done, right? Like, you actually get the house back. I have renovated, and you can just sell it from there. And because of all the gained equity, you won't be underwater anymore. But that's never going to happen. And I got plenty of funds to pay for it, right? And you can explain it like, there's other ways to explain it, but I'm trying to do a speed run on this, right? And so that's the biggest question. What if you don't pay? So that's how a subject 2 works. So if I figure out my PITI is that a month. So what I'm going to, 1260, what is it? 1460, 1217. Oh my gosh, it looks terrible. All right. So let's just make this simple. All right. Where are we doing here? All right. So if I know PITI is, let's say, $1,217 a month. I can rent this thing out to a renter for, let's say, $1,750. All right, $1,750 a month. Let's be very conservative here. Okay, yeah. All right, so $1,750 a month. Now the number is a little inflated. The mortgage is a little more than what it should be, and the rent's a little more than what it should be. But this is just for rough numbers. I do the math here. I figure out that leaves me around $533 a month in profit. I want to roughly have $250 to $300 for just basically cost of life, but that's pretty good, right? And so if I'm assuming it's going to be costs, it's not bad. But really, $553 in profit is pretty good. And also on top of that, I'm going to pay the seller $5,000 up front. Pretty simple, right? So my main cost is basically $5,000. And so this is basically what it's going to cost me just to do a subject to, really. And there's lawyer's fees, so let's call it 6 with everything. So that means $533 of profit a month times 12. That is equal to $6,396 divided by my $6,000 in costs. That's pretty dang good. That is a 6,396 divided by 6,000. That is a I'll write it like this. That is a 106% cap rate, pretty much. That's insane, right? This is why subject to deals work really well. Now, on top of that too, right, there are costs to that, but like, management, fixing up the property, you can add that too, but like also you got to add in the equity you gain every single month with your principal on top of appreciation. So that's basically when the house goes up in value. House increases in value. And you minus off the cost of it, the cap rate pretty much, it's roughly 100%. And so that's the point. And that's kind of how subject to works. Now, I'll say it like, I'll try to explain this like a simple way, but pretty much what I do is, I'll do purple. So this is Nancy, right? She's got a house, she's got a mortgage, and she's paying $1,000 a month. And $200 and like $100 for her PITI. So PITI, let's call it $1,200. All right, $1,200 is her PITI, and she's just like, I gotta get out of here. I got nothing to do here. Like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. And basically, what you do is you agree to just give her $5,000. I start paying that. I rent it in for $1,750. I'm happy. She's happy because I paid off her problem and she got $5,000, and then I'm happy because I'm making a lot of profits. Boom, boom, boom. So that's how really a subject to deal works. There's a lot more nitty gritties on there. If you go to freeholding.com, on the top left, we have a lot more lawyer explanations and things like that, how that works. But like as a wholesaler, we just have to look for an opportunity like that. If we find an opportunity, we can work with a cash buyer to do a subject to with him, and they can show us how to do the subject to, and they'll pay us an assignment fee. That's what a subject to deal is, okay? Pretty simple. That's what it is, and I'm calling it simple. But if anyone has questions on it, please let me know in the comments. I'd love to explain and bring it up. But you can do this a lot of things. And so let's talk about lease options. Second thing here is what they call lease options. All right? Lease options is short for basically writing up a lease with an option to buy. All right, let's break down that word and let's break down all of it. Okay, so let's break this down. All right, so word number one is lease. I think everybody knows what a lease is, right? It's when I agree to lease a property. So if I'm renting out a house, I'll write a lease up for a year to live in it, usually rent it out, right? That protects me as a tenant. It protects basically the landlord. It's a good option, right? Those are leases. Pretty simple. Everybody knows what a lease is. I like leases, right? Pretty cool. So that's what a lease is. Now, what is the other part here? So let's get rid of let's do the other part. What is an option to buy, right? So it's a lease, but also on top of that, there's what we call here an option to buy. And so what is an option to buy? Basically, an option to buy is basically going to be what they kind of call, everyone kind of knows this term, rent to own, where you rent it for a while, right? And then you have an option at the end to buy it for a certain price. That's what a lease option is. It's a lease with the option to buy. So that being said, All right, let's explain this one more time. I'm going to basically lease it, and at the end of the lease, I have an option. I'm allowed to buy it. All right, it is a fancy, in my mind, it is basically a fancy rent to own. That is it. It's just a fancy rent to own term. That is what a lease option is. Don't explain it like that. Don't get it all confused, but that is what a lease option is. So it's a lease with an option to buy. So how does this work, right? Lease options have 3 criteria. They're pretty simple. Number 1, there has to be equity in the deal. There doesn't have to be any equity, but I do prefer there is some equity on it. Number 2, this is a big one. Seller wants too much. So if you have leads right now, guys and gals, where the seller just wants way too much for the house and they have equity, that might be good. And then number 3, this is the kicker. This is why you're not going to tell if it's going to be a good wholesaling deal or not for a lease option or not, or if you can do a lease option, yes or no, right? This is what it's going to be, okay? Number 3, actually. So this is the third one. This is Zach's definition of it. Rick's got a little different ones. I have different ones, but we're all kind of, we do it in the same way. In all honesty, what I found is the seller basically has no big use for the money. And that's going to be a big part, okay? The seller's going to have no big use for the money when they sell it. So for example, let's break down, quick example here, all right? If I sell if I have a seller, I agree to buy his house for $120K. Let's say he had $50K in a basically loan. He'll get at the end of that term $70K, right? Right? Yeah, right. Okay. He'll basically get $70K. Let me check my math because I'm stupid. All right, $70K. That's what I thought. All right. He'll basically get $70,000 at closing. Pretty simple, right? Guess what? Here's the main issue. All right. Here's the main issue here, guys and gals. Most sellers, when they get that $70K, they'll use that to, number 1, buy a new home, right? They might, do a 1031 exchange, buy another, maybe even a rental. Maybe they're going to invest into something. Or, number 4 is they just leave it in the bank. Or number 5, they leave it in the bank basically to retire, right? That's basically what it is. All right. And then possibly they can use a lot of that cash basically to just pay the taxes, right? That's really what people do when they sell the house, right? There's other things to do, right? But that's honestly what they're doing, okay? And so that being said here, knowing this is the option, they don't really have any good uses for it, right? That being said, if they have no good use for the money, they can probably agree to sell it, but sell it with terms, if that makes sense, where they can agree to sell the property, but they're going to get a lot for it, but they're going to get paid in increments, right? And so basically the best way to explain that is obviously people pay more than mortgage because they get done in payments, right? So if I can either buy this thing for $100K now, or let's say in 3 years, I can buy it for $140,000. Or how about this? I can pay, okay, this is the regular offer from everybody, but what if my offer is $140K? Oh, that's a way better offer. But I'm going to pay you, ready? It's pretty simple. But I'm going to pay you $35K, 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 $35K in year 1, year 2, year 3, and in year 4, right? That's actually what they call, and I don't want to spoil it, but that's kind of what they call seller finance. And usually they add basically a 5% interest rate, or they add a rate, and they're basically what we call the bank, right? And that it's not the best one, right? But that's kind of roughly what a seller finance is. Or maybe they agree for a 30-year loan or a 20-year loan at a certain, and they're kind of like a bank, right? That's kind of the third part, and I kind of spoiled it, but that is kind of what seller finance is, right? Pretty simple. But let's not talk about that for a second, okay? That's just basically because I have a magical thing here called terms. And in real estate, you have, pretty simple, but there is price And then there are terms where you can agree to buy it for a certain price, but you get it terms. So in wholesaling, let's explain this. In wholesaling, price is just basically on the contract. What are the terms? Cash. I buy it cash all at once at a date at closing. That is what a wholesaling deal is, right? Now, if I'm doing another type of deal, right? Let's just, let's do deal number 4. I don't know, right? Let's call it price can be the price we have in the contract, but let's say terms. I agree to pay $2,000 a month for 7 years. And so that's your terms. You are financing, right? You are just going to basically finance me the deal. But wait a second. You're telling me I can change this to, let's say, 4,000, and then I can do 3 years. You're telling me I can change this to 1,000 and possibly do 15 years. I can do it and change it and be creative with it. If I can finance and be creative, that means I can have creative finance. Boom. Heads exploding right now. Creative financing. That's what it is. All right. So I don't want to act simple on it, but that is what creative financing is. I just want everyone to kind of grasp the concept of what I'm trying to say. That is what creative financing is. All right. And so you have price and you have terms. So with a lease option, I basically go to a seller and the house right now is worth $100K. $100K is basically what it is actually worth. I'm going to agree to buy the house and he wants to sell it for $130, which is stupid. Okay? It is dumb. That is you already know sellers like this. That is stupid. That is dumb. That is bad. No. Okay? That makes me angry as a wholesaler. Okay? That gets me very upset as a wholesaler. I see someone wanting to sell for $130K. That is a stupid price. Cash buyers want to buy this thing for $80, $70. How am I going to make money at $130? It won't be on the MLS for $100. What in the world am I going to do here? Well, it's pretty simple, guys and gals, all right? What I'm going to do is I'm like, all right, buddy. So like I've said before in wholesaling or in any deal in real estate, honestly, right? I have what we call, pretty simple, we have price and terms. So it all comes back to price and terms. Now, for you to win in the real estate game, I want everybody to understand this. You can win on price or you can win on terms. All right? You can win on price or you can win on terms. It's pretty interesting. So what does this mean, right? This means I can lose on price. I can lose on price. But if I just win on one thing, if I just win on terms, that actually equals a win. All right? If I have price, terms, and let's say, for example, I lose on terms, but I get a really good price, then that equals a win. But unfortunately, in price or terms, if I lose on price and the seller gets the terms he wants too that aren't favorable for me, that is an L. You'll lose here. Not good, right? But again, kind of like everything, if there are 2 wins, then I win. It's a pretty simple game, right? I want everybody to understand. Simple, right? All I have to do is win. All right? That's it. So I watched Ant-Man last week. All right? And Ant-Man was fighting Kang. And this was in the trailer, so it's not a spoiler. All right? Ant-Man was fighting Kang. And I don't want to go in the plot. I can't reveal the plot. But I thought it was a pretty good movie. I like Ant-Man. He said, and I will quote, he said this quote, and this is very similar to wholesaling. He said, he was fighting him for something. I can't reveal it. I don't want to spoil it. But he said, I don't have to win. You just have to lose. That is what it was in the trailer, so I didn't spoil anything. I thought it was a really cool line in the movie, and it was in the trailer, so I didn't spoil anything, okay? I didn't spoil anything. All right, all my Marvel people, don't get upset at me. But he said, it was in the trailer, It's a really cool quote. He said, I don't have to win. You just have to lose. Which basically means in creative financing, they just have to lose on something and then I win. And I think it's a pretty easy term to say, but like, that's how it works. And so take your script, like this is it. So if I have this deal right here, and let's erase the rest of this. Guys, you go on the YouTube channel, you can replay this, screenshot it, do whatever you want. Just, it's on the YouTube channel. I'll take some time and go over it. But like, so that being said, he wants way too much for the house. So he obviously, that's going to mean I'm going to lose on price. Which guess what that means? That means I'm going to have to figure out a way to win on terms to get that W. All right. And you know I don't lose. So what's a good terms for me to make it, right? Okay. Like, how am I actually going to make this work, right? Pretty simple. All right. Like, this is very simple. Okay. Well, why don't I just learn from Zach what subject to is? So why don't I do a subject to with you? Oh, I didn't mention this. He owes nothing. Zero. Equity, or let's say $10,000. Let's say he owes $10,000. Let's do a couple examples. Let's say he owes $30K on this loan. That means at 130, he owed $30K on it. Basically what this means is, let's do the value and then let's say what's owed. He has $100K in equity, which means I would have to give him $100,000 and then pay the PI/TI. Here's the problem. It's like, I can't do a subject to on this. Like, I could, but why am I going to drop $100K? And if he has all this value, it's like, I just sell on the market. I make $100K. The ROI doesn't get there. Like, you're not making 100% ROI. And most people don't want to drop $100K on something like this, right? Like, that's not a good deal, right? You want the payments to be low. And if he owes nothing, that means I'm just going to give him $130K, which means I'm going to lose 30 grand, right? And you got to remember this. If I give the guy $100K, he owed 30 on this, right? Look at this. The value is actually $100K, but he wants a $30K premium because he's crazy, which means I'm going to lose $30K on that deal because he wants his stupid price. Subject to won't work here. And if he owes nothing, you can't do a subject to because you're just giving him all cash. That's wholesaling, right? Wholesaling is subject to. You just give the guy his terms too and the price. In wholesaling, you get the terms that they want, but you also get the price where they lose, where we win. We win on the price, we lose on the terms. So that's not good. At 130, they owe way too much. But what we can do here in this situation is what they call a lease option, right? Lease option, which basically we explain to the seller like, hey, Mr. Seller, I can do you 130 price. I know everyone's offering you 70, 80, but you're going to have to give me terms. They're like, what's terms? Well, I mean, basically what terms is I'm just going to have to give you payments on the property. So what I always explain is like, hey, Mr. Seller, I can do 130, but I'm going to have to do payments. So you guys see me on the live stream say that. I'm like, I'm just going to have to do payments. Well, what are payments? Well, basically what payments are, and this is how I explain it. Like, guys, you have to explain this very simple to a cash buyer. To a seller. Mr. Seller, I will give you money up front, and then I'll pay you every single month for X amount of years. And at the end of that, I will pay that full 130. Okay. Well, I need the money for this. Oh, okay. Well, obviously, I don't really need the money for anything right now. So yeah, that could work. I just don't want to deal with this property anymore, right? It just has to work. All right. And so basically how a lease with an option to buy it would work here is, let's just go over this. Let's erase this. It's kind of, it's a fun term, but like, so let's do this. All right. So for this property, let's say we agree to give him let's do $10,000 up front. Okay. I like to look at this in like a box, but actually let's make this even simpler. Okay. Up front, I agree to get the guy $10,000. And then I agree for a payment. I agree to pay him $1,200 a month. All right. And then at the end of it, in option to buy price, I agree to buy it for $130K. And then terms. I do this for 5 years. All right. That is what it is. So basically what that means is this is what a lease option really looks like. All right. Call this a lease option. This is what a setup for a lease option's looking like for most people, right? I agree to give the guy $10K up front. I use my little pointer tool. I agree to give the guy $10,000 up front. I pay him $1,200 a month. And at the end of 5 years, I have an option to buy this thing for $130K. Boom. Oh, who takes care of repairs and all that? No, Mr. Seller, I take care of repairs. I pay the taxes. I do it all. Because I'm really the owner I'm trying to become the owner at this point. I take care of it all. Oh, okay. I mean, I don't have to deal with the hassle. I get the price I want. I get some money up front so I don't have to pay all these taxes. I like it. Beautiful, right? So the question is, Zach, how do I make money? Where's the money? Show me the money, Zach. Show me the money. How do I make money on this deal? Pretty simple. Let's kind of do this a quick math equation. I'm going to find what we call a rent-to-own seller. All right? I'm going to call what we call, this is how Rick explained it to me, all right, when I first got in the real estate game. And so I'm going to tell you what he taught me, all right? This is a big secret. I'm going to find a rent-to-own buyer. What's a rent-to-own buyer? This is a buyer that right now, they can't get a mortgage. They don't get financing. They are sick of trying to outbid everybody on deals, and they just can't get a bank to approve them. Maybe I work construction. Maybe I'm a little, under the table type of work. I own a pizza shop. Not illegal, but like maybe I own a pizza shop and maybe I make $100K, but I only report 50, which is a bad thing. IRS, if you're watching, I don't agree to that. I think it's a terrible idea. Everyone should pay all their taxes and probably even more. But that's for the IRS, so they think I'm a good guy because I am a great guy to them. But this is a person that just can't get a mortgage. Maybe they had a bankruptcy and nobody wants to give them a loan to buy a house, and they want to buy a house. It's the American dream. They want the picket fence. They want to raise their kid and a dog, and they want to do all that stuff. They just can't get a mortgage, but they know in 5 years, about 5 years they can get their credit there, right? Get some W-2 income, and then start getting a mortgage, right? They can do that in 5 years. They can repair everything of their issues, right? That's a good amount of time to repair the credit, and then a bank will like to give them the thing, right? Boom. That's pretty cool. And so here's why a lease option works. I'm going to find one of those guys. Here's the problem I had when Rick was talking to me. I was like, there's no way somebody wants to do that. There's absolutely no way somebody's actually willing to go out here and be a rent-to-own buyer. That makes no sense. It's like, yeah, no. I didn't believe it until I actually started marketing for it. And there's a ton. All right. And actually more than ever, right? And so what I'm going to do is find a rent-to-own buyer. And what they're going to do here is they're going to be squished in here. They are going to give me, $15K up front. They're going to pay $1,450 a month for 5 years. So no rent increases is actually a good deal for them. And they have an option to buy this thing for $70,000 in 5 years. And here's the thing. The seller might be like, Zach, what if you stop paying me? Oh, if you stop paying me, you got to keep my upfront payment. You keep that $10K. Wow, that's pretty good, actually. And you get the house back. And all the payments I gave you, you keep it. And I'll renovate the property, do whatever. I'll pay taxes and all that stuff. Oh, wow. Yeah, that's pretty cool. And I'll pay off your principal. I start paying your principal. That's pretty cool. And Zach, what if this rent-to-own buyer stops paying? What he says, you know what? I'm just not going to pay you anymore. Guess what? You keep their $15,000. You can float that $5,000, right, to pay off the payments and get another one. And then you get an extra $15,000 at the end. Boom. Pretty simple, right? It's easy. Easy money. And that being said here, this is why it works so well, is you make money during 3 ways in the transaction. There's 3 ways to get paid. First, you get paid up front. So you get a quick $5,000 just for producing the deal. But Zach, I don't have $10,000. No. You pay the $10K up front on the first month. So you find this person first, pay $10K off of it, and then you make $5,000. It costs no money to do this. It's pretty cool, right? It costs no money to do this. $0. If you find a seller like this, you don't have to put up any money because they put up the $15,000, then you put up the 10. That's pretty cool, right? You get $5,000 up front. So let's make this a cash for money. $5,000 up front. And then I get paid every single month. All right. I get paid every single month. I get about $250K a month in what we love to call cash flow. Cash flow. I like cash flow. Money, money, money. Show me the money. There's money there, right? And then this is the sexy part. And at the end, when it's time to sell in 5 years, you have a nice big payday of 40 stinking smackaroos. Which means at the end of this, in 5 years, I'll get paid a grand total. Let's do this. $250 a month. Let's see. Let's pop this up here. All right. Where is it? All right. Here it is. So I get paid $250. Oh, did I put K? Oh my Lord, what is wrong with me? $250 times 12, $3,000 for 5 years. It's about $15,000. So that's going to be about, it's going to be about $15,000. So that means I'm getting 15 plus 5 plus 40. That's $60,000 you make in 5 years, which kind of comes down to $12K a year with no money. No money. This is why lease options are so awesome. And this is when you have what we call a dead deal, and you can make money off of it. Pretty cool, right? And that's pretty much what a lease option. Now, seller financing is a little different, right? So I'll do a quick example. It's basically when they are the bank. So, you know how banks work with mortgages. This is pretty simple. But really what it works is you agree to give maybe upfront payment, and then you pay them for, let's say, 15 years at a certain rate. So maybe you pay $2,000 a month, and then you can go and find a person to rent it up. Maybe you get $2,500. You make $500 a month, maybe $6K a year. Out of $10,000 you spent up front for the cost, you get about a 60% cap rate, right? Pretty good. You can sell those deals all day. They're not my favorite, but they're not bad. How do I bring those deals up? Hey, Mr. Seller, would you take payments on it? I'll give you some upfront, then I just pay you for a certain amount of years. It's creative. That's how you do it. Lease options is when somebody doesn't want to sell it, do a 15-year seller financing deal. I don't want to do 15 years. I just want to sell it in 5 years, right? Boom, we can do that, right? Lease options, I like to do 3 to 5 years. And then for a subject to, you can do them as much as you really want because it's kind of unlimited. You have the mortgage for 30 years, right? And so that's how it works. And so the last part here is, I know I'm running on a big tangent here, but I just wanted to break everything down. It was a lot here, but subject to is like, how do I pitch a subject to deal to somebody? Pretty simple. Hey, Mr. Seller, you don't have any options here. I mean, why don't I just take over your mortgage and just pay you up front and then just pay the mortgage? I'll have the deed in my name, but if I don't pay, blah, 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 right? You just get into the full spiel on it. And they have to say, yeah. I want everybody to understand this. This is going to be a huge, big thing. But, make sure, guys and gals, when you have a creative financing deal, this is different than wholesaling where the seller has to be on board. All right? The seller actually has to be super, wanting to do this. You are not going to convince a seller to do a creative financing deal. They have to convince themselves. This is a great one. Okay, great. 10% of eligible deals like this are going to want to do it. 90% are going to say no. All right? The worst thing in the world is they say yes and then tomorrow they say no. If you say yes to a seller finance deal, I go to the appointment. I'm like, so you take payments? Yeah, I'll take payments. And we agree to it. Okay, well, I'll come by next week to look at the house and we can go over it one more time and then we can get started on it. It's like a wholesaling. It's like, time's going to kill the deal. No, I want to be super on board to it before I do it. And then the last part is how do I find cash buyers? Oh my gosh, how do I find cash buyers for this deal, right? How am I going to make money in wholesaling? Pretty simple. How do you find cash buyers for this? Pretty simple. Number one, the best ones for these are just going to be rental landlords. All right. If you actually talk to an OG rental guy, an OG landlord, big house flippers, legit, really big landlords in your area, they all know what seller financing is. They all know what lease options are. You know why? Because they've been doing real estate before the gurus in wholesaling had hidden everything and used their own terms. They've been reading George Bockel books. They went to seminars in 2002. They all know what they are. If you guys ever meet a real estate wholesaler that's been making 6 figures since 2001, 2002, they all know this stuff because they went through 2008 where this was huge. This is making another comeback. And so the OG rental guys are going to be there. How do you go? Just go to Zillow, For Rents, call them. just call regular cash buyers and see if they buy creative financing deals. I actually had a realtor cash buyer of mine. He's a realtor, but he's one of the biggest realtors on the Treasure Coast in Florida. And he's been buying for me forever. Like, he just buys them, rents them out. And he sometimes flips. He's like, I just learned about creative financing. Give me all the deals, right? And started giving some deals, right? But between you and me, when I get deals like this, I just keep them for myself. I love them. We have some examples. I'll tell everybody, I would love to go share all the addresses of all the rentals and creative finance deals we do. But in all honesty, I buy them in very special ways. There's trust, there's corporations, there's other things where I want to protect my assets. Just protect them, right? And so people don't know where they are, but I'm the owner, but no one knows of the owner except for the government. And, it helps with lawsuits, help with all that stuff. So I don't really share the addresses too much. I've shared, I think, 4 or 5 properties on the channel on it just to show I do it. But I do a lot of, I do a very good amount because I'm in a great market for it, right? But I could tell you I wish I could show you more, but to keep our assets protected, I don't really show the addresses or anything like that. And that's kind of funny. But I'll tell you this, I love doing them. And I love doing them in a way because you can actually set them up in a way where your assets are protected. So it's a great strategy. I like it. So yeah, that is creative financing. I know I just said a lot there, but in all honesty, it's a great one.